Hi, everybody. Welcome to Special Education Thursday. This is Molly Whalen. I am a special education parent advocate here in D.C., and I do Special Education Thursday webcasts on behalf of the Advocates for Justice in Education, or AJE as we like to call them, and they are the official parent training and information center in D.C. For special education and for disabilities. We do Special Education Thursdays to take a little bite-sized piece of something in special education. We focus very much on DC, and we talk to an expert in our community to try to demystify different topics. And this one today is definitely one that is mystified for me, so I'm excited to be demystified. It's on manifestation determination reviews, commonly known as MDRs. And I have one of my favorite friends, colleagues, and gurus of all things special ed, Maria Blaeuer, who's the Director of Programs and Outreach at AJE, and she's going to be our guest and tell us all about these MDRs. Hi, Maria.
Hi. So this is like a power nugget of a Special Education Thursday. Because, people...
We're not going to make it a big bite size. We're going to make a teeny bite size.
Yes, but there's going to be a lot in there because manifestation determination reviews are something that, parents call us about, and they're a little bit scary, and they sometimes happen unexpectedly. So we thought it was important to get a webinar about this that, parents could go to because, contrary to popular belief, I don't actually live at the office. I do leave sometimes.
Okay, so Maria, when do parents need to think about MDRs? They're specifically focused on students with disabilities who can or are suspended from school, right?
Right. So first is a little bit of myth busting. Students with disabilities can be suspended from school. Just because a student has an IEP or a 504, it doesn't mean that they're exempt from school discipline policies and practices. So that's just an important thing to have in your head, first of all. And parents need to start thinking about manifestation determination reviews, or MDRs, if their student is being suspended or removed from school for more than 10 days, and that's 10 days in a row or in aggregate. So that's, 2 days here, 3 days here, 6 days there. If it adds up to 10 in one school year, before the student hits the 11th day, they're entitled to what's called a manifestation determination review, which is essentially a very special kind of IEP meeting.
Okay. And then where does let's get the basics. So how does a parent even know an MDR is happening, and where do they happen, and how does it work?
Sure. So they happen at school, and you get notice just like you get with a IEP meeting, although usually it's going with a disciplinary event, and the rule is that the manifestation determination review has to happen within 10 days of the decision to suspend the child. So let's say there's an incident at school and the school decides that they want to pursue a 10-day suspension of a student. The student is entitled to that manifestation determination review as soon as the school has decided to suspend the student. So during the investigation period where they're investigating the incident, we don't need to have the MDR there. We don't need to have the MDR yet. It's when they've decided to remove the student from school, and those removals have either in that one incident or in aggregate hit more than 10 days.
Okay. And so everybody on the IEP team comes, or is it just the relevant folks, or can a parent ask for, hey, I want the speech therapist and an OT there too? How's that work?
So that's a really good question. The first thing to remember is the parent is probably the most important part of that meeting, in part because they have the context and have known the child for the longest. It must include a representative from the LEA, so the LEA representative, and then the language in the law is all the relevant members of the IEP team. So it could be the related service providers. Usually if the student's receiving behavioral support, it's important that their licensed clinical social worker come or the school psychologist come. But the classroom teacher is also an important person there. It really depends on the behavior, but I generally like having more people there than less because we're really asking a complicated question at manifestation determination reviews.
Okay. And then, okay, so we're having this meeting, you know, we've gotten, let's assume the parent got the letter and it's ready to go. What happens in it, and how does it look like an IEP meeting, or, you know, how's it organized?
Sure. So it looks like an IEP meeting in the sense that we're all sitting around a table, and you have all your typical rights that you have at an IEP meeting. So if you want to bring somebody with you, you can. As a matter of fact, I really recommend that people do bring people to manifestation determination review meetings more than maybe they would even to an IEP meeting, because they do tend to be a little bit more stressful because there is a problematic behavior or a school discipline issue involved. And I also recommend, bringing folks who have some familiarity with the student, their disability, and how that disability manifests for that student. What does this kid's ADHD look like?
Okay, so I need to stop that for a second. So that's this manifestation determination, what was it, review meeting?
Yep.
Is all the words kind of refer to the student's disability, right? So so I just want to say that again, because I think as a parent it kind of doesn't, it doesn't come naturally to us. So the reason we're there is to say if you have a child with ADHD and they have no impulse control and they got in trouble in regards to something that they had no impulse control over, that could be the manifestation. So in other words, they're in trouble because of their disability. I mean, is that a weird short-term way of explaining?
No, that is the perfect way to explain it. And I will probably use that. I will probably steal that from you when I talk to parents. The way I like to explain it is that we've decided in the law that we are not going to punish students because they have a disability, right? That's not what we're trying to do at schools. We're not trying to punish students because of their disability or because of behaviors related to their disability. So the question that the team is answering at the manifestation determination review is, was this behavior somehow connected to or related to the student's disability? And that's the manifestation determination part. Was the behavior a manifestation of their disability?
Gotcha. And so that's why they have this special meeting or these meetings for kids with disabilities, because lots of times, especially when we're talking about ADHD, we're talking about emotional disability, autism, other developmental disabilities, probably even intellectual disabilities. There's things that students do that they can't control or they can't understand, and that in a typical school may be seen as bad behavior or, punishable offenses, right?
Exactly. And I think the important thing to remember is that we're not trying to determine at a manifestation determination review whether or not the student, quote unquote, meant it.
Gotcha.
Or whether or not they, quote unquote, knew better, or whether or not it was an irresistible impulse. I think sometimes people get a little confused about these meetings. We are answering two questions. Is the conduct caused by or had a direct and substantial relationship to the child's disability? So was it a manifestation of their disability? That is a yes-no question. So that's the first question we're answering. And then the second question we're answering is, did the conduct happen because the school didn't implement the student's IEP or the student's IEP was inappropriate? Right.
So if we have a student who's really revved up because they haven't had a sensory break all day and they do an inappropriate behavior and then they get in trouble, we're going to go back and say, if we're a parent and a team, and say, listen, he's getting suspended because of this action, but you all haven't been giving him his sensory breaks during the day, so we're kind of got a revved up, top, and then you get mad when it explodes. Is that parent speak? Did I say it right?
You said it perfectly, and I think that's also a great example of why I think these meetings are hard.
Yeah.
These are not the easy meetings. So if you have someone who can come with you, I really, really recommend it.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the tools that we talk about, in preparing for IEP meetings go doubly true for manifestation determination reviews.
Gotcha.
We're going to focus on behavior. We're not going to talk about intent. We're going to assume goodwill. And, a lot of that's really, really important. Because these can be pretty intense meetings.
And I would say, Maria, I would imagine close to 99% of the ones that you participate in, the school and the teams are not really ready to, assume goodwill and say, hey, we understand this is a manifestation of their disability. They're just angry that the behavior is happening, right?
Oh, that does happen a lot. I think sometimes it can be hard because the law doesn't require that you one mistake that happens a lot is that people look at the first page of the IEP, okay, and they see on there maybe specific learning disability. And they go, okay, well, you know what? This behavior didn't have anything to do with the student inversing and reversing letters or not being able to read something, so therefore there's no way it's a manifestation.
Gotcha.
And that's not the question. We need to look at the student holistically. We need to talk about all of their needs and all of their diagnoses. So, maybe this child who has specific learning disability and their biggest educational impact is specific learning disability at school, maybe they also have significant anxiety. And maybe the behavior was related to like an anxiety relieving thing. They were trying to escape something. Gotcha. Or it could be that, the student's primary disability is, yes, specific learning disability, but they also have a significant history of trauma. The school's aware of that. And there is a particularly triggering incident. And, the student has an FBA around that. And we need to talk about that because that would be a manifestation of their disability. It's just not, it's so much more than the first sheet of the IEP. You've really got to look at the child holistically, which is why I always advise people to bring additional information, and really feel comfortable saying, hey, school, it's not just this first page of the IEP. It's the whole evaluation. It's the whole thing. It's the whole lived experience of this kiddo.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've got, the basics of it. You've got a terrific slide that says exceptions, special rules, and additional resources. So I think I don't think you want to get too deep into some of these, but let me bullet them out, and then you kind of comment as you want. You've listed that there are special rules for when students bring a gun, weapon, or when a student is seriously injured in the behavior. And I guess the best advice you've given here is call AJE or another attorney if you need help with that.
Absolutely. That gets a little bit wonky, and it's worthwhile to give us a call and walk through some of that.
Okay. And then you've got one of our favorite links, rightslaw.com, about a how-to on MDR. So they are a national website that has pretty much everything and great articles on special ed. And then you've got two local. One's OSSE, the Office of State Superintendent for Education, which is our state education agency here in D.C., and so you've got a link for their guidance on MDRs for all schools, and I guess this is a great time to remind everybody that OSSE oversees all public schools. That means DCPS schools as well as all of our 65 local education agencies, also known as public charter schools. And then you have Chapter 25, which are additional rules for DCPS schools must follow on MDRs. So anything you want to say about those two local resources?
Sure. So I kind of want to warn parents before they click on the how-to for MDRs. It was written by a wonderful attorney in Virginia. He also does some work, in D.C. and Maryland, but it's really detailed. And long, but it's also really good advice. So I kind of want to warn you before you click on that it's a lot. It's really good, but it's a whole lot. And the thing I like about the OSSE guidance is that it makes it very, very clear in their little section on manifestation determination reviews what schools are supposed to be doing and what questions they're supposed to be asking. They use the exact same language in the slide that I used in the slide. So I like it for that reason. It's very, very clear. And then in Chapter 25, there are additional rules that only apply to DCPS regarding manifestation determination reviews, and what disciplinary consequences can happen if the student's behavior was found to be a manifestation or not found to be a manifestation. And we should clarify, so this is backing up a little bit, if a student's behavior is found to be a manifestation of their disability, the school cannot remove them from school. They go back to their regular educational setting, and the school then needs to do what's called a functional behavior assessment and create a behavior intervention plan. Because we don't want schools to punish kids because they have a disability. So if the student's behavior is found to be a manifestation of their disability, they go back to class. They're not going to be punished for being a student with a disability. They're not going to be punished for manifestations of that disability. Now, if the student's behavior is found not to be a manifestation of their disability, then the regular disciplinary process engages at that point. And depending on what the violation was, they're going to go through whatever the other disciplinary process is in that school. So for DCPS, that's Chapter 25. For the charter schools, it's whatever their handbook says. But I think that's the important thing to remember is we're having this manifestation determination review to determine whether or not we're going to go down the disciplinary path or not. Does that make sense?
I'm going to be honest as a parent and say that's a lot. So I'm going
it is a whole lot.
My advice to parents is, hey, you can always call AJE and they can walk you through this. You can listen to this webcast over and over. But I think I want to share as a parent, don't think that you have to know all of this inside and out. Most of us parents are not lawyers and or educators. And so just know that there are lots of resources you can double check. And I guess my best advice to parents is remember, if you're in these meetings and it starts to seem really confusing and scary, you can say, stop, I think I need more advice. I want some help. It's okay to be confused yourself, but let that school team know that you really need some support and need some help on this.
I think that's really good advice. And I think if you get a letter in the mail or if you get a phone call saying we need to have an MDR, reach out sooner rather than later.
Gotcha.
The law is a little bit different around MDRs, and they also tend to be a little bit more emotional, just to be very honest.
Yeah, and I think you've advised folks that they can bring someone. I would also highlight it doesn't have to be a lawyer, and it doesn't have to be someone who knows this. It could be your best friend. It could be an aunt of your child. It could be a neighbor. It could be someone who just takes notes and can do it succinctly and quietly and listen for you, because these kinds of things, IEP meetings at the best make me cry. I would imagine an MDR meeting would make me really cry, and when you're upset, it's really hard to kind of pay attention to some of the words that are said. So just feel free to bring just someone with you that you can trust that will listen and take notes for you.
No, I think that's really, really good advice, especially for these meetings, because they are, I think, even harder than typical IEP meetings.
Absolutely. Okay, and just remind everybody, this webinar and others are posted on the AJE website, www.aje-dc.org. And if you have any questions, as I said, you can always give AJE a call, 202-678-8060. I think we've given parents plenty to chew on MDRs. But Maria, do you have any last piece of advice or last words of wisdom on here?
Honestly, for MDRs, I think the biggest thing to remember is to take care of yourself. So just be ready and know that they tend to be a little bit more emotionally challenging than other meetings. And then keep in mind that the conversation is supposed to be about the student's disability and the IEP. It's not about anything else. Was this behavior a manifestation of their disability? Was it related to their disability?
Yes or no, right?
Right, yes or no. Not, yes, it was related, but no, it's a yes or no. Because, they're tough. they're tough conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, Maria. Thanks, everybody. Signing off for this one.
All right. Bye-bye.